My daughter, without even understanding the weight of what her words carried, revealed my cheating wife's betrayal. "Daddy, I saw Mom kissing the neighbor," she told me, with the purity of someone who doesn't understand what betrayal is, as if it were just another detail of the day. At that moment, my heart was pierced by 1,000 needles. How could someone destroy a family like that? I felt my daughter's shaking hand holding me, her eyes waiting for some kind of answer. There was no answer. There was no justification. Just a growing emptiness, a burning anger, and an unbearable sadness. The shock turned into a feeling of urgency. I needed to act, do something. Betrayal ran through the rooms of the house like a shadow, each wall seemed to tell me a different story, hiding secrets I should never have discovered. And then, the questions began to emerge. How long had this been happening? How many times did she lie, look me in the eye and pretend everything was fine? Every second with her now felt like a carefully orchestrated lie. A lie lived in the bed where we shared our dreams, in the home we built together. "I don't know how to tell you this," my daughter repeated, perhaps realizing that those words would change all of our lives forever. And they changed. I made the decision to confront my wife. The words flew out of my mouth like sharp blades. "Did you cheat on me?" She hesitated, looked down, searching for the right words, the ideal excuses. There was no excuse. "It's not what it seems," she started, but I didn't want to hear it. I didn't want to understand. All I saw was an abyss opening between us, a distance impossible to bridge. The next few days were a blur of arguments, shouting, and tears. Every word she said felt like a desperate attempt to manipulate me, to make me forget what I knew was the truth. "Think of our family," she pleaded, "think of our daughter." I thought about her all the time. She thought about what would become of her growing up in a house full of secrets and lies. I refused to live like this. I decided that divorce would be the only possible path, and more than that, that my daughter would not be under the influence of a mother who betrayed our trust, our family. The thought of losing my daughter devastated me. She was the only thing that kept me sane, that gave me hope. I couldn't leave her with a mother who, in my eyes, had destroyed everything we had fought for together. So, the decision was made, I would fight for full custody. I would fight to protect my daughter from a woman who didn't know how to value what she had. But this fight would bring with it other battles that I didn't expect. It was then that the situation became even darker. My wife, realizing that she was about to lose not only her marriage but also custody of our daughter, fell into despair. Her tears, once so fake, began to seem real. She begged for a second chance, saying it was all a mistake, a momentary weakness. "I don't know what I was thinking," she repeated, but the pain in my chest prevented me from believing it. As the lawyers discussed the terms of the divorce, I found myself in a psychological war that I never wanted to fight. She threatened to reveal herself to her daughter in a way that would cast me as the villain of the story. "If you take her away from me, I will say that you were always an absent father, that I did what I did because you emotionally abandoned me," she said with her eyes blazing. Her every sentence made me question who she really was and what else she would do to maintain some control. I started to live a life of paranoia. Every chance encounter, every conversation with friends and neighbors, everyone seemed to know more than I did. The pitying looks, the whispers. They knew. They knew I was being cheated on, but no one had the courage to say anything. And the truth is that, for a long time, perhaps I knew it myself and preferred to ignore it, I preferred to believe that we were happy. At that moment, I was only certain of one thing, protecting my daughter from all this confusion. But how could she do that when the person who was supposed to be a model of love and security for her had become the symbol of everything that was wrong and corrupt? I couldn't allow my daughter to live divided between us, being pulled to opposite sides, manipulated by someone who had already shown herself to have no scruples. I knew I needed to act fast, and act strong. As the days passed and the divorce process unfolded, the atmosphere at home became increasingly unbearable. The silences were deafening, and conversations were always interrupted by tears or screams. I tried to keep my daughter away, I tried to pretend everything was fine, but I knew she felt the tension. She knew she was the pivot of a dispute greater than anything she could understand. However, what awaited me was something I could never have imagined. Something that would change not just my life, but everyone around us. A revelation that would transform this battle for divorce and custody of my daughter into a devastating conflict, full of betrayals, secrets, and irreversible consequences. And then, in that court, in front of judges, lawyers, and everyone who watched our story fall apart, came the decision that would define our destinies. Welcome to the channel. Here, we do not tolerate any type of betrayal. All the stories told are fictional, created to show how betrayal can devastate the lives of everyone around. Get ready to dive into plots full of emotion, twists and life lessons. Buckle up, because you're about to hear a shocking and unforgettable story. Good story. John Mitchell was the typical family man. A tireless worker, married for 12 years to the beautiful and enigmatic Amanda, his life was a succession of routines that brought comfort, work, home, family weekends and, occasionally, meetings with friends for a barbecue or an American football game. He had moved to the suburbs a few years ago, looking for a quiet place to raise his 7-year-old daughter, Emily. The house they lived in was one of those typical of American suburbs, with a well-kept lawn, a white picket fence and a wooden swing that Emily loved. In anyone's eyes, the Mitchells' life was enviable, a happy, close-knit family built on a solid foundation of trust and love. But the shiny surface hid cracks that John couldn't yet see. Amanda, on the other hand, had that classic beauty that didn't seem to wear away over time. With brown hair and eyes that reflected a mixture of softness and strength, she enchanted everyone who met her. His smile was always warm, but often, his gaze seemed distant, lost in thoughts that not even John could unravel. Amanda, who had been a passionate visual artist in her youth, left her career to focus on being a mother and wife, a decision that seemed right at the time. However, time shaped her in an unexpected way, bringing a restlessness and dissatisfaction that she didn't know how to deal with. She often found herself alone during the day, while John worked long hours to support the family. And as much as she loved her daughter, there were times when the life she chose seemed to suffocate her. Emily, the light in John and Amanda's eyes, was a vivacious, smart and observant child. At just 7 years old, he already demonstrated an intelligence and sensitivity that surprised the adults around him. She loved spending time with her parents, but she also had a strong connection with her neighbors, especially Sam, the charismatic man who lived next door. Sam was seen as a good neighbor, always willing to help, whether it was taking care of the lawn or fixing something around the house. The friendly relationship he had with the Mitchell family was natural. After all, they had lived side by side for 5 years and maintained an easy friendship, full of casual conversations and shared laughter. It was common, during the weekends, to see John and Sam exchanging jokes while having a barbecue in the backyard, or Amanda and Sam talking about art and music on the porch, while Emily played with the dogs. John trusted Sam completely, as much as he trusted Amanda, and there was no reason to suspect anything. John's job at the local accounting firm required overtime and dedication. Even though he arrived home late, he made a point of spending time with Amanda and Emily, trying to make up for the moments he was away. He truly believed that everyone was happy and that, despite the challenges, his family was solid. However, Amanda had been feeling increasingly frustrated. She loved John, yes, but there was something missing, a passion or excitement that seemed to have faded over the years. Maybe it was the monotony of married life, maybe the emptiness of not pursuing her career as an artist, or maybe it was just the feeling that she had lost herself in becoming a mother and wife. Over the past few months, she had started going for runs at night, looking for a little time to think and reflect. Just to clear it out, she would tell John when he asked. And he accepted that answer without question. Amanda's runs became more frequent, and she began returning home later, often with an excuse ready about meeting a friend or getting lost in time. It was at times like these that John felt a small pang of worry, but he quickly pushed those thoughts away. Amanda had always been honest with him, and the idea that something might be wrong seemed irrational. He preferred to focus on his plans for the future, a family trip, maybe a new job for Amanda when Emily got a little older, or even the idea of renewing his wedding vows. For John, marriage was sacred, and he was willing to do whatever was necessary to keep it strong. At home, conversations were normal, filled with trivial everyday matters, about what Emily had done at school, about the art projects that Amanda was trying to resume, and about finances or John's next work project. But the once vibrant emotional connection now felt more like a silent routine. John believed this was a natural part of any long-term relationship. After all, no marriage keeps the same flame burning forever, he thought. He didn't see that Amanda sometimes looked at him with a mixture of affection and sadness, as if she wanted to go back to the beginning, to those days when everything seemed more intense and passionate. Meanwhile, Emily, in her innocence, kept the family together in an imperceptible way. She was the one who always made them laugh, who pulled John to play, even when he was tired, and who made Amanda forget about her frustrations, even if for a few moments. Emily was also a big fan of Sam. She loved listening to the stories he told about his youth or his travels, and he always had time to play with her or help her paint something when Amanda was busy. This created a dynamic that, for John, was simply perfect: a helpful neighbor, a loving wife, and a lively daughter. As the weeks went by, John began to notice small changes in Amanda's attitude. She seemed more distant, more reserved. It wasn't obvious, they were just details. Maybe a lost look, a colder touch, or the way she quickly looked away when he tried to talk about the future. He tried several times to ask if something was wrong, but Amanda always ignored him. "It's okay, John, I'm just tired," was what she always said. And he wanted to believe that, he wanted to believe that it was just the stress of everyday life, nothing more. However, as the days passed, there was a growing tension in the air, something invisible but impossible to ignore. It was as if a thread of instability was beginning to coil around the Mitchell family, threatening to snap at any moment. John, not knowing how to deal with this feeling of restlessness, tried to get closer to Amanda. He surprised her with dinners, tried to rekindle their passion, but every effort seemed in vain. Amanda smiled, thanked him, but he felt that she was far away, as if she were somewhere else, even though she was by his side. One day, John arrived home early from work, determined to spend more time with his family. The sun was setting, turning the sky orange and red, and he figured it would be a great opportunity for a family outing. When he entered the house, he saw Amanda and Sam talking on the porch. It was just an instant, a brief moment where she threw her head back and laughed at something Sam had said. But there was something about that laugh that made John feel uncomfortable, like he was looking at something he shouldn't. John's heart skipped a beat. It was just a laugh, an innocent conversation, like so many others they had already had. But why did that bother him so much? He quickly shook the thought away, but the doubt remained, planting a small seed of uncertainty that he couldn't ignore so easily. Sam's gaze met John's, and he waved with a carefree smile, like someone with nothing to hide. Amanda immediately turned around and gave her husband a smile. "Love, I'm glad you arrived early. We were just talking about some neighborhood stuff." But that night, while everyone retired to their respective rooms, John remained awake. The silence in the house felt heavier than ever, and he wondered if he was imagining things, if his mind was playing tricks, or if there was something deeper that he couldn't see. A feeling of discomfort embraced him, as if there was something about to be revealed. John would wake up with a strange feeling, as if something was out of place. The discomfort grew every day, but he tried to ignore it, drowning in the routine, the quick breakfast, the warm goodbye to Emily and a hasty kiss with Amanda, who always seemed busy with something, always with her eyes far away, avoiding him. Deeper contact. Those eyes that, in the past, made him feel safe now made him uneasy, as if they hid a truth he couldn't see. Despite the uncomfortable feeling, John tried hard to maintain normality, planning surprises for Amanda in an attempt to rekindle the flame that once seemed inextinguishable. One Friday afternoon, he decided to get home early. He had bought flowers, chocolates, imagining that maybe a dinner for two could make Amanda go back to being the woman he knew. When he reached the door, he felt adrenaline rush through his veins. He opened it slowly, trying not to make any noise. The silence in the house felt hollow, but he knew Amanda was somewhere. Then, he heard laughter coming from upstairs. Two voices, one male and one female, muffled, but clear enough to make your heart beat faster. He climbed the stairs slowly, his body seemed to shake without control. When he reached the top, he saw that the bedroom door was ajar. He approached, trying to understand what was happening. But nothing could prepare him for what he saw. When he pushed open the door, he found Amanda and Sam, the neighbor he trusted so much, in an intimate embrace, their lips pressed together as if the world around them didn't exist. The bouquet of flowers fell from John's hand. The dry sound of the stalks breaking on the ground was enough to snap Amanda out of her trance. She looked at him in shock, eyes wide, and quickly backed away from Sam. The room seemed to spin for John. Betrayal, until then a possibility he would never consider, was now wide open in front of him. Amanda tried to speak, the words stumbling in his mouth, but he could hear nothing, only the frantic beating of his own heart. John. I can explain, Amanda started, but he raised his hand, signaling that he didn't want to hear it. Sam's face, once friendly and welcoming, was now that of a defeated man, someone who knew there was no excuse for what he had just done. The silence that followed was filled with tension and pain. Amanda, in tears, tried to take John's hand, but he lightly pushed her to the side. All he felt was an overwhelming wave of anger, betrayal, and most of all, a deep sadness that seemed to swallow his soul. How could you, he finally managed to say, his voice low, as if he were talking to a stranger. I trusted you, Amanda. I trusted you, Sam. And this is how you give back. Sam lowered his head, unable to look at him, while Amanda continued to cry, desperate. Unable to look at either of them, John left the house. With every step he took, his mind was filled with memories, happy moments that were now stained by the discovery of that betrayal. Amanda's laughter, the moments he thought they were reconnecting, the nights of affection, it all felt like a farce. He walked aimlessly through the streets of the neighborhood, feeling the weight of each step, not knowing how to face the future. Deep down, I knew that this was not a situation that could be escaped forever. Sooner or later, he would have to return home and confront reality. The betrayal was done, the damage was there, and there was no way to erase it from his mind. But, more than the betrayal, there was something that worried him even more, Emily. How could he protect his daughter from that emotional storm? How could they keep her from being overwhelmed by the chaos Amanda had brought into their lives? When he finally returned home, he found Amanda sitting on the couch, her face swollen from crying. Sam was no longer there. She stood up as soon as he entered, her eyes pleading, trying to find some spark of understanding in John's eyes. Please listen to me, she begged, but John shook his head, trying to hold back the tears. I just want to know one thing, he said, his voice cold as ice. How long has this been going on? Amanda hesitated for a second, as if choosing her words carefully. It was a mistake, John, she began, but he interrupted. How long has it been? He repeated, his tone implacable. She lowered her head, unable to look at him. A few months ago, he whispered, barely audible. The pain of the revelation hit John like a punch in the gut. Months. All that time, while he was trying to save the marriage, while he was planning surprises to rekindle the flame, she was cheating on him with the man he called his friend. You destroyed everything, he said, his voice cracking with sadness. Everything I fought for, everything we built, you threw it away for this? Amanda was crying uncontrollably now, trying to get closer, but John backed away, keeping his distance. I don't know how I'll ever look at you again, he said. And more importantly, I don't know how I'm going to protect Emily from this." Amanda tried to explain herself, saying that she didn't want any of this to happen, that it was a moment of weakness, that she still loved John. But all her words sounded empty, as if she were trying to fix something that was beyond repair. Deep down, John knew that nothing she said would change how he felt. Nothing could erase the image of her in another man's arms. And then, there, in the middle of that chaos, John made the decision that would forever change the course of their lives. And it was just the beginning of what was to come. John stayed away from Amanda for the days following the discovery of the betrayal. He started sleeping on the sofa in the living room, avoiding any type of contact that wasn't absolutely necessary. Emily, not understanding what was happening, started asking questions. "Daddy, why don't you sleep with Mommy anymore?" Or, "Why don't you laugh together like you used to?" John tried not to let the pain that was gnawing at him show, responding with a forced smile and a kiss on her forehead. Every time the little girl asked about her parents, he felt the pressure to remain calm and protect his daughter from the chaos that was about to ensue. Amanda was also in despair. He tried at all costs to get closer to John, saying he wanted to talk, begging for a chance to explain better what had happened. She knew the betrayal was unforgivable, but she couldn't bear the thought of losing everything. "You need to hear my side, John," she would say whenever he walked past her, ignoring her. "Please listen to me for just a minute." But he always responded with the same icy silence, or with a single sentence, "There's nothing to hear." The climax came on a Friday night. John had gone out for air, trying to calm down, and when he returned, he found Amanda sitting at the kitchen table, alone, with a half-empty bottle of wine and her face wet with tears. "You can't ignore me forever," she said, as he tried to walk right past her to get something from the fridge. There was something different in her voice, an intensity he hadn't noticed before, something between anger and despair. "I can try," he replied, opening the refrigerator door and trying to maintain control. "I'm going to lose you, aren't I?" she asked, her voice shaking. "I'm going to lose our family." John turned to face her, eyes burning with suppressed anger. "You've already lost," he said firmly. "You lost the moment you decided to throw our lives away." He was preparing to turn his back again when Amanda, in an impulse of desperation, grabbed his hand. "You don't know everything, John," she said, her voice barely audible, as if the strength was leaving her body. "I don't want to know anything else," he replied coldly. But Amanda held on tight, her eyes filled with tears and despair. "It's not about me," she insisted. "It's about Emily." John felt a chill run down his spine. The mention of his daughter made him stop. He looked at Amanda, seeing not only the woman who betrayed him, but the mother of his daughter. "What's wrong with Emily? What did you do?" he asked, each word coming out like a knife being stabbed. Amanda let go of his hand and placed hers over her face, sobbing. "I never wanted you to know like this," she said, her face hidden by her hands. "But I have to tell you. Emily, she's not your daughter." For a moment, the world seemed to stop. The words echoed in John's mind, but he couldn't process them. No, that couldn't be true. It was a cruel joke, a nightmare he couldn't wake up from. "What are you saying?" he asked, his voice breaking. "Of course she's my daughter. She's my daughter, Amanda." Amanda raised her head and looked at him, her eyes red from crying. "No, John," she said, almost helplessly. I had an affair 8 years ago, right before we found out I was pregnant. I never had the courage to tell you. You were always so good, so perfect, and I was a coward." John staggered back, as if he had been punched. "You're lying," he shouted, anger burning in his eyes. "You're lying. Emily is my daughter. I raised her, I know you created her," Amanda interrupted, her voice thick with pain. "And that's why I never had the courage to tell you. I thought I could live with that lie, that maybe it didn't matter whose daughter she was, because you were always her father. But I can't take it anymore. And you need to know the truth. The ground seemed to disappear beneath John's feet. The memories of all the moments with Emily flashed through his mind, the laughs, the hugs, the nights he rocked her to sleep. Now, it all seemed to fall apart. "How could you do that?" he whispered, his voice cracking. "How could you lie to me, for so long?" Amanda stood up, trying to get closer, but he backed away. "Please let me explain," she tried. "Explain what?" he shouted, feeling tears burning in his eyes. "Explain that you made me believe I was the father of a child that wasn't mine. Explain that you destroyed my life, that you betrayed me in every way possible. There is no explanation, Amanda. There is no way you fix this." She sobbed, falling to her knees, desperately trying to reach his hand. "John, please, please forgive me. I was confused, I was scared, I didn't know what to do." He took a step back, the expression on his face showing utter contempt. "You took everything from me," he said, his voice low and full of pain. "You made me believe I was a father. You let me love Emily as if she were my daughter. And now you tell me you weren't." Amanda continued to cry, but her tears no longer made sense to John. What he felt was not just the pain of betrayal, but the abyss of a love that had been stolen from him. A pure love, which he always thought was unconditional, now shrouded in lies and secrets. "And who is the father?" he asked, after a long silence, as if the words burned his throat when they came out. Amanda hesitated. "It was an old colleague from work," she said finally. "It wasn't Sam, it wasn't anyone you know. I broke up with him as soon as I found out I was pregnant. I never saw him again." John shook his head, trying to absorb the avalanche of information. It was a lot. It was impossible to think clearly. "I don't know what to do anymore," he said, looking at Amanda with a mixture of pain and hatred. "I don't know who you are anymore." Amanda tried to get up, but John backed away, as if he couldn't stand her presence. "I'm going to get out of here," he said finally, turning toward the door. "And when I get back, I want you out. I don't know where you're going, but you're not staying here." Amanda sobbed even louder, reaching out her hand as if to hold him, but John was already walking out the door, feeling the weight of everything he had just discovered. As he walked out of the house, the air felt heavy on his shoulders. Everything he knew, everything he believed, had turned into a cruel lie. And now, he knew he had to make a decision that would impact not only his life, but that of Emily, his beloved daughter who, despite everything, would always be his, at least in his heart. And so, John prepared for the hardest battle he had ever faced. A battle not only against Amanda, but against the secrets she had hidden and the pain that now consumed him. John left home that night aimlessly, driving through the streets as anger and pain mixed in his mind. The discovery that Emily was not his biological daughter weighed like a stone, but what hurt most was the feeling that every moment he had lived as a father had been contaminated by a colossal lie. He parked in an empty park and, for a long time, just stared into space, trying to process everything, taking deep breaths to keep from completely collapsing. He felt helpless, betrayed, as if a part of him had been forcibly ripped away. But, as much as he wanted to escape that feeling of helplessness, he knew he needed to make a decision that would change the family's future. The question that kept echoing in his mind was, what to do with Emily? As much as he was devastated by Amanda's betrayal, the truth was that he loved the girl. It didn't matter if she didn't carry his blood. He raised her, loved her, and was the father she always knew. But now, knowing that she was the result of betrayal, that he was not the biological father. Did that change everything? The moral dilemma consumed him. What would it be like to look at Emily every day and remember that she was living proof of betrayal? Would he have the strength to continue being her father? Or was he being selfish in wanting to take her away from Amanda, the only mother she knew? That night, he slept in the car, fighting the tears and the memories, until tiredness finally overcame him. When he woke up the next morning, the sun was already shining brightly, but inside him everything was still dark. Taken by a mixture of sadness and determination, he decided that he needed to protect Emily from the whole situation. So he called a lawyer, seeking guidance about custody. He wanted full custody of the girl. Amanda could no longer have the right to manipulate her, to drag her into that web of lies she had created. When he arrived home, he found Amanda still sitting in the kitchen, her eyes sunken and her face pale. She seemed to have aged years in a single night. "John, we need to talk," she began, her voice weak. "I won't let you take Emily away from me." "You no longer have a say in this story," he replied firmly. "I'm going to fight for custody. And I'm going to win. You're not going to destroy anyone's life anymore, Amanda." Amanda stood up, anger taking over her. "You can't take our daughter away from me. She loves me, she is everything to me. You don't have that right." John moved closer, looking directly into her eyes. "She's everything to me too," he said. "And I'm not going to let her grow up learning that lies and betrayal are normal. You made the choice to betray me, to hide the truth. Now you're going to have to deal with the consequences." The next few weeks were a whirlwind of legal documents, meetings with lawyers and court sessions. Amanda, desperate, tried to convince John to leave everything as it was, saying that they could get over it, that he could still be Emily's father. But for John, there was no turning back. He saw Amanda's tears, her pleas, but with her every word, he could only remember the lies, the kiss she gave another man while he believed they had a perfect family. The situation became even more complicated when the court decided to listen to Emily, who was clearly confused and saddened by her parents' estrangement. For the girl, everything was a meaningless fight. She wanted her mom and dad together, like it always was. And it cut John inside. Seeing Emily so hurt, without understanding what was happening, made him question whether he was doing the right thing. "I just want everyone to stop fighting," she said with tears in her eyes, pulling his arm. "Please, Daddy. I want everything to go back to normal." John found himself caught between protecting his daughter from Amanda's toxicity and, at the same time, trying to prevent Emily from suffering more than necessary. Deep down, he knew that no matter how much custody he got, Amanda would always be a part of Emily's life. There was no way to erase a child's mother, no matter how wrong she had been. This meant that he would have to find a way to deal with the situation in a way that would hurt the girl he loved so much as little as possible. One day, Amanda did something unexpected. She went to John's parents' house, a last desperate attempt to appeal to his common sense. The conversation was difficult, full of tears and requests for forgiveness, but most of all, Amanda begged John to let Emily stay with her. "You can't keep me away from her," she said, her eyes pleading. "I know I was wrong, but I can't lose my daughter. Please, John, think about her." John stood his ground, but deep down, he felt the weight of that decision. He knew Amanda was trying to manipulate the situation in her favor, but there was an undeniable truth in her words: separating mother and daughter would be devastating. He found himself torn between the justice he wanted for himself and what was best for Emily. How could anyone decide something like that? And the more he thought, the more he realized that whatever the choice, there would always be pain. Finally, the day of the last court hearing arrived. John was there, firm and resolute, while Amanda sat on the other side, accompanied by her lawyer, her eyes fixed on the floor. Emily was present too, her face pale and eyes red from crying. She seemed so small, so fragile in that cold, impersonal environment, and John felt his heart break all over again. He had fought so hard to protect his daughter, but now everything seemed wrong. In that courtroom, as he listened to the lawyers argue the merits of each side, he realized that the most important thing was not winning or losing a legal battle. The most important thing was Emily's well-being, her happiness. And at that moment, a painful and clear truth came to his mind: if he kept fighting, if he kept pushing Amanda away, the one who would really suffer would be his daughter. And he couldn't allow that. John made a decision that would forever change the course of their lives. He stood up, interrupting the hearing, and asked to speak. He looked at the judge, then at Amanda, and finally at Emily, who looked at him with those eyes that would always be his little girl's. "I will not separate a mother and a daughter," he said, his voice firm but full of emotion. "What I want is what's best for Emily. And that means, she needs to have her mom around." Amanda, upon hearing those words, began to cry silently. She knew that this was not forgiveness, but a decision from a father who only wanted to protect his daughter. And John, even though he was devastated, knew he had made the right choice. Now, with the legal battle over, the biggest challenge remained: how to rebuild what was broken. How to protect Emily, not just from Amanda, but from the shadow of the truth that would always be present in their lives. After the hearing, a dense calm took over the Mitchell home. John felt a tiredness that seemed to have no end, as if the court decision had drained all his strength. He knew he had done what was best for Emily, but that didn't mean things would be easy. In the following days, he tried to return to a routine, a new kind of normality, but the air inside the house was different, charged with a silent tension. Amanda moved into a small apartment a few blocks away. The court had granted joint custody, and Emily would have both parents on alternate days. Amanda had begged John to at least leave this door open, and he, thinking about his daughter's well-being, accepted. But he made it clear to Amanda that while she could continue being Emily's mother, there would no longer be room for them as a couple. "We're done here," he had said coldly. "For her sake, I will try to be civilized. But don't expect more than that." The first few days were difficult. Emily, confused and sad, constantly asked why they couldn't be a family like they used to be. "Daddy, why can't you and Mommy love each other again?" she once asked, her voice full of hope. The question hit John like a knife. He pulled her into a hug and tried to explain simply, "Sometimes things change, my love. But what will never change is how much I love you. You can be sure of that." Amanda, in turn, was living a nightmare in her new reality. The separation left her aimless. She spent her days trying to start over, to rediscover herself in a world where there was no longer the comfort of the family she destroyed. The days with Emily were sweet and painful at the same time, for she knew that half of her daughter's heart was with John, and he would teach her the truth about trust, honesty, and how Amanda had betrayed those things. She spent sleepless nights, wondering how she had allowed her life to get to this point. Guilt gnawed at her, and memories of the recent past tormented her. One morning Amanda decided she needed to change, not for John or to win him back, but to be a better mother. She sought psychological help, started working on herself and tried to build a healthy relationship with Emily. In the days she spent with her daughter, Amanda tried hard to show Emily that, despite her mistakes, her love for her was unconditional. "Mommy made a lot of mistakes," she said one afternoon as she combed the girl's hair. "But you are the best thing that ever happened to me, and I will never stop loving you." Meanwhile, John went on with his life as a man marked by recent experiences, but not defeated. He focused on his work and raising Emily the best way he could. He learned to be a single father, dividing his time between the office and time with his daughter. The relationship with Amanda was cold, limited to exchanging information about Emily's routine and visiting hours. He knew he would never be able to forget what she had done, but he also understood that constant anger would get him nowhere. "If I stay trapped in hatred, the one who will suffer the most is our daughter," he thought. Over time, John began to find a new balance. He and Emily created rituals that brought them comfort, like pizza and movie nights, where they laughed together and, for a few moments, forgot the shadows of the past. He was determined to teach his daughter that despite what happened, she was loved and deserved a happy life. Little by little, he realized that he could build a new future for them, even if Amanda was part of it in some way. Amanda, after months of therapy and reflection, made an important decision. One afternoon, he asked John to meet at a cafe. He was suspiciously wondering whether she would try once again to reverse the divorce decision or beg for forgiveness. But seeing her sitting at the table, something seemed different. She was calmer, a look of resignation in her eyes. "I'm not going to ask you to forgive me," she began, her voice calm. "I know that I made unforgivable mistakes and that I broke everything we had. But I have to say that I'm trying to be a better person, especially for our daughter." John remained silent, his eyes fixed on her. Amanda took a deep breath and continued, "I have accepted that you will never forgive me. And in a way, I don't deserve it. But I want you to know that I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to be the best mother I can be to Emily. Not for me, not for you, but for her." He was quiet for a few moments, letting her words echo. Deep down, I recognized the sincerity in his voice. "I believe in change," he said finally. "Not for us, but for her. If you're doing this for Emily, then maybe one day she'll see you in a different light. And that's what matters." The months turned into years, and the new family dynamic gradually stabilized. John and Amanda learned to coexist as parents, not enemies, while remaining focused on giving Emily a childhood that, despite the circumstances, was healthy and loving. The girl grew up surrounded by two versions of love, that of a father who was always there and that of a mother who fought daily to regain her trust. The end of John and Amanda's marriage left deep marks, scars that both would carry forever. However, he was able to turn the pain into something more meaningful. John continued to be an example of resilience for Emily, showing her that life can be difficult, but it also offers us the chance to be better, to overcome adversity and find new paths. Amanda, in turn, accepted that she couldn't go back, but decided that she could build a new future. She knew her relationship with John would never be restored, but she also knew that the respect they developed over time was the only way to create a stable environment for Emily. And that, she realized, was the best she could do. The path forward was still uncertain, but one thing was certain: everyone had changed. Emily, now older, would one day learn the truth about what happened. And maybe she could forgive her mother, understanding that people make mistakes, but they can redeem themselves. As for John, he knew his heart would take time to heal, but he had chosen to move forward, rebuilding his life with whatever dignity he had left. Thus, John and Amanda's story comes to an end. Not a happy ending in the classic sense, but a realistic ending, where everyone found a way to move forward and face the consequences of the choices they made. And perhaps, in that acceptance, there is a form of happiness. If you've made it this far, leave your thoughts on this story in the comments. What would you do in John's place? Subscribe to the channel for more stories like this and share with whoever you think needs to hear it. Remember, this channel does not support cheating of any kind. We want to show how wrong choices can destroy lives, but also how it is possible to find a new path. Until next time.